And joining me on the phone right now is Senator John Barrasso. Good morning, Senator.
Thanks so much for having me.
So I understand you're going to be heading out to the Ukraine. It's something. This is something you've been working on for a while. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, we've seen what's happened with Russia and the Ukraine with the move by Putin to invade the Crimea and threaten the eastern Ukraine. And one of the areas that Russia really hurts the economy of the Ukraine is in natural gas. 60% of the natural gas that they use in the Ukraine is from Russia. Russia can turn the switch on or off and make sure that they don't get it and raise the prices and hold them hostage. They do the same thing with European gas. So I'm heading along with Senator McCain this weekend, going to the Ukraine to visit with the Prime Minister and others on the ground about ways that we can help with American energy, with the energy that we have in Wyoming, to undermine the Russians' dominance of the energy market in the Ukraine by allowing us to export more of our products from the United States to Europe, to our NATO allies, and to the Ukraine.
So a lot of people, and once this whole thing in the Ukraine broke, a lot of people have been wondering, what can the Americans do? What can we do to maybe throw a stick in the spoke of the Russians? And this sounds like this is something that we could do without getting militarily involved or anything like that. Not having to worry about the United Nations. This is something that I guess we could do to help the Ukrainians.
Well, that's exactly right. And I was at home in Wyoming last weekend. Was in Buffalo for the health fair. Was at a Boy Scout event in Casper, and at a Kiwanis pancake breakfast. And I heard exactly what you just said there from people all around Wyoming last weekend. Kind of throw a stick in the spoke to slow them down without getting militarily involved, because I don't see anybody that wants to get militarily involved. But if we can undercut Russia's energy dominance in the area with something we have in abundance in this country, and of course, look, I want the president to get more involved in allowing us to use more American energy, coal, oil, gas, uranium for nuclear power, all of those with more production in the United States and then exporting our product, so that I'd rather have those dollars coming back to America than just us spending more money and sending it over to Saudi Arabia and other people who may not necessarily be our friends.
Well, and do you foresee having any trouble in the Senate with this bill?
There's bipartisan support for the bill I've introduced. Obviously there are folks who are, I believe, held hostage by the environmental extremist. I brought this up in the Foreign Relations Committee on Wednesday. The senator from Massachusetts, Markey, who was involved in that Waxman Markey, that cap and trade, the one that Mike Enzi and I call cap and tax. He opposed what we were doing because he doesn't like any sort of carbon-based energy, it seems to me. So he was very vocal in his opposition, but there were a number of Democrats who spoke favorably about it, and of course Republicans are on board. So we're trying to force the president's hand into approving more exports of liquefied natural gas, of which we have an incredible abundance in Wyoming.
Well, and we've talked a little bit about the natural gas, but we've seen some such resistance from the administration with coal and with oil as well. Do you have any updates on the coal exports?
Well, I've been working and met just earlier this week on Wednesday, and for your listeners, anybody that's going to be in Washington on a Wednesday, Mike Enzi and I do a thing called Wyoming Wednesday. We have coffee and donuts and juice, and a chance for people from around the state who happen to be in town to get together. We had included in that yesterday were some folks who are working so hard to allow us to export Wyoming coal to China by building a port, an export port, in the Pacific Northwest. They're working in Oregon and Washington State, and they know how important it is to us in Wyoming, and I know how important it is for us to be able to get that port built. And it's interesting because, the unions want it because they know these are good jobs working at those ports, and the folks that build construction want it. But the environmental extremists on the West Coast have been continuing to, kind of slow things down. So the two messages are, yes, we're working on that, continue to work on it, and if any of your listeners are in Washington on a Wednesday, I'd love to have you join us for Wyoming Wednesday.
And that's every Wednesday?
Every Wednesday when we're in session, but call the office in advance. Go to our website. Mine is www.barrasso.senate.gov.
Okay, and I know your time's kind of limited here. I understand you're going to be on Fox News in just a short bit, but I also wanted to ask about Obamacare, and of course, it seems like this is going to be at least through the midterms, if not all the way to 2016. I mean, I kind of have a feeling it's going to be the big issue in 2016 as well, because it's not going to get any better. The law is just bad. Can you give us a little bit of an update on maybe some of your efforts to again throw a stick in the spokes of Obamacare?
Well, a couple of things. What you just said is exactly what I heard at the health fair in Buffalo this weekend. As you know, I've been the medical director of the Wyoming Health Fairs for almost a quarter of a century, and try to get to as many health fairs as I can. But people are saying exactly what you said. It's many are, with the Obama health care law, harder to get a doctor, harder to keep a doctor, premiums going up. And then yesterday, the Secretary of Health and Human Services said once again, premiums are going to go up, going to cost more next year than this year. I gave a speech on the Senate floor on Thursday that went through the number of times, and it's over 24, that the president has kind of unilaterally changed the rules, changed the law, said, well, we're not going to enforce this part, or we're going to ignore that part, all in an effort to try to camouflage the real terrible parts of this health care law. And there are things that Mike Enzi and I pointed out on the Senate floor 4 years ago were going to happen, and now they've come home to roost. So I think it's going to be a big issue in the election this year as well as 2 years from now. They've delayed some of these things beyond the 2016 election, pushing off some of these things. But what hasn't been delayed is the mandate that says everybody has to prove to the IRS that they have health insurance. And not just any health insurance that Barack Obama says is the level they need. So it may not be right for you or your family and not what you want or need or can afford, but it's what the president says you must have, and we just know that's wrong. So this is going to continue to be very unpopular. It's interesting, the president is Friday, today, going to be doing an interview on WebMD, which is where a lot of people go for medical advice. And I think under the health care law, where it's going to be harder to get a doctor or keep a doctor, we're going to have more people going to WebMD, and people are going to find it easier to use and more reliable than the president's own website, healthcare.gov.
Well, and it's funny you mention that, because I mean, I have some friends that are doctors, and I can tell you every time they have somebody coming in with a printout from WebMD, they just roll their eyes, because I mean, it seems like everything leads to cancer on WebMD. But I think you might be right. I mean, people are going to be looking all over the place for any kind of medical advice that they can get, that they can afford, because they're not going to be able to deal with the expenses of Obamacare. I mean, I think, and you mentioned all of these mandates getting pushed off. Do you think that this is an attempt to hide the effects of it? And if that's the case, I mean, has it even been effective?
Well, I think it's an effort to hide the impact until after elections. I think the president is very worried that he's going to lose control of the United States Senate. He's already given up on the House of Representatives, realizes the Republicans will keep that. I've been traveling around trying to help our Senate candidates in various places to try to pick up a majority. I want to make Mike Enzi the chairman of the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee again. He was terrific when he was chairman before, and if the Republicans take the majority of the Senate, we will be able to do that for Mike Enzi and for Wyoming. I think it would be great for our state to have the chairman of the Health Committee be from Wyoming, and certainly from Campbell County, and he knows these issues so well. So those are the efforts, and I think the president is fearful that he's going to lose the Senate and then lose his ability to force nominees through the process, And these are ones that I think are bad for our environment, bad for our economy, and ones that come out with regulations that are harmful to across the board to our way of life in the Rocky Mountain West and specifically in Wyoming.
So, and you mentioned the attempts for the Republicans to win the Senate back. Do you think that that's I guess a goal that is attainable?
Well, I think it is absolutely attainable. There are more and more folks who are very unhappy with the health care laws. They see the way it impacts their life, very unhappy with the president's handling of the economy, with regulations that are expensive and burdensome and time-consuming, and people all around, Campbell County see that on a daily basis. We had a hearing on transportation issues, and we had someone from Wyoming testify yesterday, who said that for every one, there's a mile of paperwork for every mile of road construction. I mean, think about that. How many? That's for 5,000 pieces of paper for a mile of road construction, with just paperwork and filling out forms for the federal government. That's wrong. We know that that's a drag on our economy. So I think there's more and more people see how unpopular the president's policies have become. I think it's more and more likely that we're going to be able to be successful to focus and get people focused on voting for a government that is not their adversary, which is what we have now. More people believe the government is their adversary than their advocate. We need a limited government, lower taxes, fewer regulations, kind of a reasonable approach to life as we know it in Wyoming.
Well, and I think most of our listeners would agree with you on that too. One final question. I know you probably are kind of short on time, but one of the things you mentioned was the president making all of these decisions to push off the Obamacare mandates and some of the other things that he's been doing without Congress's consent. And it seems like there's been a vast expansion of the power of the executive branch. What have you? I mean, have you been working on anything to kind of rein that in? I know the House.
Yeah, actually, the REIN Act, which was to rein in these ridiculous and far-reaching regulations that go way beyond the original intent of the laws. We're bringing lawsuits. There's been a Supreme Court hearing on emissions from coal-fired power plants. They've had a hearing on that. Continue to bring lawsuits. So the president, kind of is forcing things through in ways that I think are not legal. It takes a while to get to court on the different things that he's been promoting that we continue to oppose and think that he's gone way beyond his legal rights.
Well, and you mentioned the REIN Act. Is that related to the vote that was taken in the House yesterday, where Sheila Jackson Lee claimed the Constitution was 400 years old?
I missed that one, but I can tell you, well, the bills that we have that are responsible ones, the president will never sign them, and as long as he's in the White House, we're going to continue to have an uphill fight. Yeah.
The bill in the House yesterday, it was just a basic bill that said the president had to follow the laws of the United States, and apparently that's a problem to some people.
Well, it is to the president, and that's why we need a different president. That's what I'm working on every day. But anyway, thanks so much for letting me on today.
Thank you, Senator Barrasso. I hope to see you soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. That was Senator Barrasso, and with that, we're going to take a break. News Talk 1270, KIML.